Hey, it's Melanie, and welcome back to Lyric Mastery. So we are going to look at the lyrics of the song "The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia." That was written by Bobby Russell and first recorded by his then wife, Vicki Lawrence, who also put it on her album of the same name. And this song was written in 1972, right? Incredible how long ago that was. And I've already taken the song through my spreadsheet with over 65 different criteria that I use for analyzing the power of the song lyrics. Like, how powerful are they truly when it comes to their content, the message that they communicate to the audience, and the experience that they give to the audience. And 78%, that is pretty good. Let's dive right in and talk about the song "The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia." Let's look at the song's first line first. He was on his way home from Candletop. Been 2 weeks gone and he thought he'd stop. So all that we get in the beginning of the song is all establishing the setting. He was on his way home from Candletop. Like nowadays, when you want to break through the noise with your song and really hook the attention of the audience right away with your song's first line, then establishing the setting like this is not going to get them hooked. Okay, they don't have the patience anymore. They just want to get right through it, right? So since this song was released in 1972, at former times it was okay to establish the setting so the audience can ease into the story. But nowadays, this is not working anymore. So I highly recommend, if you want to write a song like this, because there are some great things that this song is doing, and we will get to that. But if you want to write a stronger song's beginning, then start your song's beginning with a powerful opening line. So when we only look at the song like he was on his way home from Candletop, this is not interesting anymore. But what we get out of it is we know where the character is coming from. Like, we have a place mentioned, it's from Candletop. We also get a time indication, which is the duration that he has been there for 2 weeks. So he was gone 2 weeks. So we get a little context about the man's situation. We also know that the song is written in third person. So because we have like he was on his way home, and there also must be a narrator, but we're going to get to that later. So this is like the initial information that we get. And then as the first verse progresses, we learn more about the character's initial situation. And we know like, oh, okay, he's stopping now. He wants to go for a drink. So he's probably stopping at a bar and he's meeting that Andy Warlord guy there. Then it's already like the last line of the first verse. Rose said, "Sit down, I got some bad news and it's gonna hurt." Like, this is actually the part that grabs the audience attention, that makes it interesting. Like, this is the one, this is the hook, right? I got some bad news. And we as the audience, now we are really interested to find out, oh my God, I wonder what those bad news are. Like, he has been gone for 2 weeks. Like, I wonder what happened. So this is the hook. And if you're writing a song that you want to base on this song, then you should start with that right in your song's first line. Or get really quickly to that part that someone else has some bad news for them. We have that person mentioned with the name. So when we name characters in our song, then, or like in storytelling in general, if you name a character, then they need to be important. Like, when you read a screenplay of a movie, then you maybe have like, you have Radar 1, Radar 2, Lawyer 1, like they don't have names because they are just serving a certain role in the background. But as soon as it comes to the main characters in the story, then they all have names. And you want to look at this the same way in your songwriting. If it's really an important person for the narrative you want to tell, especially when you write it in third person, then you can name that character. And we know, because his name is Andy Warlord, we know that this is a person of importance. And we also later know that the entire inciting interaction was caused by this one person, by Andy Warlord. So he has a very specific role to play, and it's very important. And that's why he has a name in this song. So for now, let's just look at the story. This is a song about a crime. So since we don't know that in the beginning, we just want to hear, what are those bad news? And then Andy continues to say that he is establishing his relationship to that third person character. So we know they are best friends. So he has his level of how relevant he is. It has just elevated another step. So he's not just a barkeeper who has bad news. It is a barkeeper who has bad news, who is also the best friend of the third person character, the song's main character in that song. So you can see how the relationship is more and more defined, who those people are to each other. And it's pretty well done. So he says, and you know that's right. So they both have like that common ground. Then we hear more about the third person character's situation. We get more information about his life. So we know that he has a young bride, and that young bride is not home tonight. He has been gone for 2 weeks, and since he has been gone, she's been seeing that Amos boy, Seth. So this is like the first gut punch. Like, oh my God, she's cheating on me. And of course, like the character in the song, he got mad, and he's also seeing red. So those are like some indications to the emotions of that third person character. But when you look at point of view, because we mentioned it's written in third person point of view, but the narrative distance that we have to that person, it's not intimate, it's not close. We are as the audience like further apart from him. We are not too distant, because we at least get some insight into what he's feeling later on, also when we hear about that he's scared. So his feelings get mentioned, but we don't really experience them with him. We are observing. So that's why we have that narrative distance that puts us apart from that unfolding situation. So this is it about his emotions, but at least we know how his reaction is. We know that he's mad and that he's seeing red. So he's probably getting super angry and he can't function anymore, like consciously function anymore. He's just getting very, very mad. And then what does his best friend do? Like, it's so incredible. Boy, don't lose your head. Like, he's trying to calm him down only to deliver the next gut punch, right? Because to tell you the truth, I've been with her myself. Like, what a turn of events, right? This is incredible. Something we didn't see coming. So when we look at the second verse, since you've been gone, she's been seeing that Amos boy, Seth. This is the inciting into action. Those are the bad news that disturb the song's main character. This is like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And then when Andy tells him that he has been with his wife too, this is just adding another progressive complication. The problem is not just bad, but it's getting worse. So this is how the story for now progresses, because you can also see how the level of betrayal increases. That guy was not only betrayed by his wife, but also by his best friend, who's also like eager to tell him, hey, I've been with her too. And just by looking at this part of the betrayal, then you can see how the character's worldview is already shifting, because he was going away and he probably thought that everything's fine. It also shows some level of naivete, like he was being naive to think that. And now, after the inciting into action, after hearing that he has been betrayed by his wife and by his best friend, this leads him to that place of truly being disillusioned about everything that he thought. But we are not getting that insight. But we can see how this has been a true gut punch to him, that one thing that truly puts him on a different path, because he was just stopping by, then he wanted to go home, and suddenly he's going to go home for a different reason. We have the chorus. The first time we hear the chorus, and it goes, that's the night the lights went out in Georgia. That's the night that they hung an innocent man. And now when the first time around we hear those lyrics, then we think, because the third person character is so mad with his best friend, then we think that the innocent man that gets hung is Andy Warlord. Like, this is the first thing that we think about. Oh, he probably killed that guy. This is so great done to lead the listener astray. And this is also like a very important part of crime stories themselves, because in crime stories, like, what's one of the main things you encounter in a crime story? It's not just the clues, but you also have red herrings. Like, we call them in storytelling, we call them red herrings. And this is basically, they find clues, but they are leading in the wrong direction. Like, they are misleading the protagonist investigator to find out who the real criminal is. So we have red herrings, and this is a red herring for the audience because they think that Andy Warlord is the guy who has been hung. And you can also see now how the chorus actually gains meaning each time we hear it, because the next time we're going to hear it, we know that it's not going to be Andy who is hung. Then you also can see how the lyrics talk about the justice system and how they criticized the justice system because the judge in town got blood stains on his hand. So this already foreshadows what we will encounter next. This gives us this kind of disturbance as the listener to know that we will not be able to trust the law. So yeah, this is already setting up what we will encounter soon, especially when we get to the crisis point where the character has to decide. We just get to that in a moment. Let's just look at the third verse now, because the first 3 lines of this, it's just showing us what Andy is doing now. Like, he has upset his friend very, very much because of what he confessed. He thought it's not a big deal because like this Amos guy is with the guy's wife as well. So he could just do that too. So what's the deal? But it turns out differently. So he's now scared and he's leaving the bar. He's walking home because he didn't live far from that place. And what we hear about the resolution of this, for Andy at least, is that he didn't have many friends and he just lost him one. So he just lost another friend because of what he did. So this is kind of the resolution for Andy's story. Not quite the end of the end, because we know what happens next, but regarding what his own personal journey looks like when he look at Andy's story, then he had the choice to tell his friend, like confess to his friend the truth, or just let it stay hidden. But he did confess. And this is how it all plays out. Now he's scared. Now he's going home and has lost another friend. So it's a cautionary story in itself. You should not betray your friends. So easy as this, right? So we have another cautionary story baked into that song, which is quite interesting. And you also know, like, now we know why that character has earned his name, because he has his own story. He has his own storyline. So he's an important character, and he is. And also how the entire thing will unfold later on. We have that situation now, and the narrator, like the one telling us all about this, about the man the wife cheated on, about Andy Warlord, the narrator, they can just tell us about those things because they have more context than we do, and they select the pieces that are relevant in the order that they need to present it so that we can actually get the story, get what's happening. So the next thing that's happening is, that's quite interesting as well. Brother thought his wife must have left town. So isn't this quite interesting right now? The narrator now reveals the relationship they have to that third person character, brother. So now we know that the narrator of that song, like the person singing this, right, that is presented by Vicki Lawrence. The audience has that revelation, oh my God, the narrator in that song, that is the sister of that guy, because she's calling him brother. So that's really cool. And we also understand that it's the brother who thought that the wife must have left town. The narrator knows different, right? The narrator knows what truly happened to the wife, but the brother thought that the wife must have left town. So this is also giving us like a little insight into what the character must have been thinking. But again, it's from that outside perspective of the narrator. And then we get the information what he's actually doing. So he went home and finally found the only thing that Papa had left him, and that was a gun. And again, the only thing that Papa has left him. So this is a very, like, how do you say, like a very lovable word for calling your father. And since she is his sister, she has also the same affection for that guy. Like, it's Papa. Papa, Papa, Papa. That's cool. And what we encounter here is another progressive complication, which is an affordance. This is actually something that helps that guy to achieve his goal, because he is now out for revenge. And finding a gun, that's actually helpful. So it's a progressive complication that is an affordance. So it's not an obstacle, like Andy is leaving the bar now, like he has to go and find him again. Or the other thing that we mentioned is, tell the truth, I've been with her myself. Like, this was also another progressive complication which made the case worse. It was an obstacle because now it was not just about that Amos guy, Seth, but that progressive complication made it very personal to the protagonist, who seems to the audience to turn out to be the criminal because one of the conventions in a crime story is that the criminal makes it personal. And we have that right here. And the victim, like that Andy Warlord guy, like he asked for it, right? He asked for it because he cheated on his best friend with this guy's wife. It's getting personal, and we have that affordance, that is the gun. And then the story continues. There's no chorus here. So just the story continues. The guy went home, got his gun, and now he went off to Andy's house and slipping through the backwoods, quiet as a mouse. So you see his effort in trying to stay hidden. He's trying to stay unnoticed. Really pay attention to this here. He was quiet as a mouse. So this is really emphasized that he is trying to stay unnoticed. And this will get relevant in just a second. And then another progressive complication is came upon some tracks too small for Andy to make. So this is what we have here is another progressive complication, as I've already mentioned, but it's an irrelevancy, a seemingly irrelevancy. The moment the character encounters this, they don't see how this is relevant to their current situation. It's just later on that the seemingly irrelevancy gains meaning. We know that this becomes meaningful at the end because it's referred to again. So if you want to include those seemingly irrelevancies in your song lyrics as well, then they have to be referred to later on. It's like you're putting in a clue and you have to refer to it again. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to include it. It has to fulfill a specific purpose. So we have those tracks there. And then the third person character, he's looking through the screen at the back porch door, which also tells us great information about where he is, right? We know the back roads, we know the back porch door. So the song is giving us very good indications of where the song's main characters are and when is it all happening. And we also get like lots of literal actions that are relevant to the micro strategy that the song's main character is pursuing. Like it all comes together, it all fits well together. And this is why we have that image in our mind, helps us to picture what's really going on. It's a little movie that's going on inside our mind. And now the third person character is seeing Andy lying on the floor in a puddle of blood. And this is another progressive complication. So, hey, I was out for blood and I wanted to act on my revenge. And now this guy is already dead. But he's not able to rationally think about this. He is just starting to shake, seeing his friend lying in this puddle of blood, knowing there's a killer on the loose. And he's right there because Andy was just alive when he left the bar and now he's dead. So this means like the killer could still be around. Like he is disturbed by seeing his friend dead. So there's probably a lot that's going on in his head right now, but we are not getting access to this. So again, the narrative distance stays apart from the emotions and thoughts of the song's main character. We are apart, not distant, because we still get some information. We hear about he is starting to shake, which gives us some insight to how this disturbs him. And then we get to the turning point. And the turning point is that moment where the portfolio of choice that the song's main character had to react to the inciting into action, this is when it shrinks down to a binary choice. And I know probably many of you would have said, like, the turning point, isn't that like when Andy is lying on the floor in that puddle of blood? But seeing his friend like this still offers the guy lots of options. He can just go home again. He can go down to the street and make an anonymous call. He can go inside and check if his friend is indeed dead. He could ring the neighbors. He could just scream. Like you see, there are so many options how he can still react to that moment, to that progressive complication. So since there are so many options, we don't have a binary choice. But the binary choice, which is the crisis, comes through the real turning point. And that is when the Georgia patrol is making their rounds. And they're driving by there. And he's right there at the scene of the crime. He doesn't have many options left. There are no options left except two. And this is now what I said before, when we heard how he tried to stay unnoticed, unseen, invisible, he was like going through the backwoods and everything, quiet as a mouse. Now this is part of his choice. Is he gonna stay unnoticed, like shall he just hide? Which means if they catch him, they will think that he's the killer. They will suspect him because of his behavior, because he's doing what a criminal will do, right? Just go and hide, stay unnoticed. The other option is to let them see that he's there, like make note of himself so that he can just seem like a person who just went by and who noticed this first, so that he can avoid being a suspect. But all he can do is actually just do an outcome prediction, right? He doesn't know what's going to happen next, whether he's making this choice or that choice, because this is all that he has left, a this or that choice. What's he going to do? That's the crisis. And we have that right here because the patrol car is coming by. Doesn't have any options left except those two. What's he going to do? And what he decides to do is he's firing a shot just to flag them down. When you think about it, like he is using the most force or the most powerful course of action to make the patrol car notice him. He's firing his gun, which is a bad thing to do when you are at the scene of a crime where someone is lying in the pool of blood. Like a bad thing to do, but probably because he was shaking, right? He was like, what am I going to do? And when a character makes an active choice, how does it unfold? And we have a big bellied sheriff who grabbed his gun and is saying, why you do it? And we immediately know how this is turning out. The guy who tried to avoid being the suspect by being real and just stepping forward, he is now the suspect. Why you do it? And then we have the judge who's also saying guilty in a make-believe trial, right? A trial that wasn't really a trial because the judge just wanted to get home for supper. Because before in the chorus we mentioned that the last line about the judge who has blood on his hands, that this is actually foreshadowing what's going to happen next. And it foreshadowed it for the audience, not for the song's main character, that third-person character. It's not foreshadowing it for them, but for the audience, because we have this disturbance. We feel that disturbance in ourselves, that something will not turn out as the character thinks. And this is what happens here. The character thinks he can avoid being a suspect by his actions, and it turns out differently. He is becoming the suspect. He's convicted of a crime he didn't do because it was just a make-believe trial. And this is where you can see where that criticism of the justice system, where it originated from, why the narrator included that in the chorus, because this is what happened. There was no fair trial. And now the next time, the second time now that we hear the chorus, the night the lights went out in Georgia, that's the night that they hung an innocent man. Now we know that the innocent man is actually our song's main character, the third-person character, and he's getting punished for a heroic action that he did. Now, when you have watched the Lyric Mastery Success Path, then at one point I'm talking about what we should not do when we want to write a cautionary tale, and that is punish the character, the song's main character, for a heroic choice, for the choice to transform, to do the thing that's right. But in this song, the song's main character is doing the right thing and he's getting punished for it. But it works in this kind of song because we have already set up that the justice system is flawed. So this song serves as a cautionary tale for so many reasons. Basically, it comes down to if the justice system is flawed, then you can be punished for doing the right thing. And this is a huge warning. This is something that really shows the criticism towards that system, and that we need to be very aware of what's going on. And this is also a big part of crime stories, like those crime stories that go to another level, where it's not just about like who done it, right? It's not just about that, but it's the crime stories that actually explore the justice system and what is just, what is right, what is wrong. And even the people within that justice system, are they following the law? Are they using the laws for their own gain, for gaining power. So there's like a lot that goes into it. But what we have in that song is already addressing that criticism towards the justice system. And yeah, this is just a huge eye-opener for the audience to see how it could all play out. Because in the end, neither option was really preferable. So you really see the best bad choice that the song's main character had to make, because he has motive, right? Like, this guy was sleeping with his wife, so sooner or later the police might have come knocking down on his door. He had a gun, maybe. Yeah, you don't know how it would all play out. So neither option is really preferable. Both could have ended with him being the suspect. So now after the chorus, after the audience had this huge revelation with, oh my God, I didn't think this would happen. An innocent man got hung because of that justice system. So this is already super powerful. And then we get to the last verse. And this is so great. This is so great. Well, they hung my brother before I could say. Like, they hung my brother. So the narrator is finally reading themselves again, right? They are referring back to, hey, this is my brother. And this has already been established, right? Because she said brother before. She mentioned their father by saying Papa. And they hung my brother. So there's no doubt anymore that the person who got hung is the third person character. It's just a confirmation of this, of what happened. And then it gets interesting. Before I could say, the tracks he saw while on his way to Andy's house and back that night were mine. Isn't this an incredible turn of events to understand that the narrator was the person who was there before our third person character? It's his sister, right? And this also gives the answer to the question of that seemingly irrelevancy. Like, why was that included in the lyrics? Because it has relevance. It is relevant to know about those tracks, and they are getting referred to now at the end of the song to show how the narrator is woven into the story, how they play a huge part of this. And then the next line, and his cheating wife had never left town. We are now wondering, why does his sister know that the wife didn't leave town? So we keep being intrigued by everything that is revealed now. And then we know, and that's one body that will never be found. Like, this is at least one body that will not be found. We understand now his sister killed his wife. That's one body that will never be found, which is a strange way of saying it, like one body that will never be found, because the other body was found, which means also with the information that we have that the tracks near Andy's house were hers, then we know that she has killed Andy as well. So it's so great to understand this now, that the narrator who tells us about the third person character and his friend Andy and everything, that they have been the murderer, that the sister was the murderer. Because see, little sister don't miss when she aims her gun. So we know, wow, she has killed those characters like the wife and Andy. And the other thing we notice now, because remember back here when Andy just said hello and third person character said like, hey, what's doing? Sit down, I got some bad news and it's gonna hurt. And then he's just telling him the truth, like, I've been with her myself. Like, all of this is told by the narrator. And the narrator is an unreliable narrator because she has not been in the bar with them. So she doesn't know how the third person character, like her brother, actually found out about his best friend's betrayal. We don't know how they actually talked with each other, how the brother actually learned about this. But because she is the narrator, she is able to put her own thoughts into what she is telling us, and she can narrate it any way she wants. So she can also create the dialogue between those other characters in the way she sees fit. This is quite interesting to think about it, that this is not actually what truly happened. It's just the narrator's story, who is an unreliable narrator because she wasn't there with them. But at least she can give us the story filtered through her own perception and filtered through what she wants the audience to know. This song is amazing, like how it turns out those red herrings in between, misleading the audience. That's the night they hung an innocent man. When we first think of Andy being that victim, and then just finding Andy's body, and the third person character wasn't even the guy who killed him, then the entire make-believe trial and how it all turns out, and we learn that the song's main character is the guy who gets killed, who gets hung as an innocent man. And then we have another shift where it turns out that the sister is the murderer. So yeah, what a great job, like how those lyrics progress. This is an amazing crime story, right? So it's really, really cool. Not for them, but obviously for us as the songwriters to study those lyrics.
And if you want to write a song like The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, you can use this blueprint. It gives you all the important story moments and the components that you need to create a song that is just like The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, but you can write your own story based on this foundation. So it's not copying, it's just using the story structure of this song to write your own story. So if you want to see how this song is actually laid out, all the important pieces of it, then please follow the link in the description below and you can get that blueprint.